to watch a clock. I don't even have to watch a clock. I don't even have to watch a clock.
Hello, hello. Welcome to the Bold Moves podcast. This is episode number 207, and I am the host, Mandy Bryce. If you're new around here, let me explain a little bit about what we do. I like to share interviews on Mondays with people who have made bold moves, stepping outside of their comfort zones, and have lived to tell about how their lives have been impacted by these risks, and usually how other people's lives have been impacted by the risks as well. This week's guest, Teresa Ford, is no exception, and her bold moves were both on a private level of just deciding she wasn't comfortable in her body anymore and forcing herself to take her cassette Walkman and listen to some AC/DC and run and lose 8 dress sizes, but then also to go from stay-at-home mom to accidentalpreneur in being a hormonal fat loss coach. So it's a really fantastic story. I really hope that you love it. Stay tuned until the end for more details, but without any further ado, here is Teresa Ford. All right, everyone. Today I am with Teresa Ford. Super excited to share your story. Welcome to the show, Teresa.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. So I've seen some before and after pictures. So if you're just listening and not watching, you're going to want to check the show notes out for that. But you're here because the show is called Bold Moves, and you've obviously made some in your day. So why don't you share a little bit about your story and some of the risks you've taken and how they've paid off?
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate this. It's a lot of fun to actually review your own story because it helps you realize how far you've come. And everybody has a story, so that we're all on the same playing field there. But I actually came from a background where we were poor. And I don't mean financially. I mean the mindset in our household was very poor.
Okay.
And whether we were financially poor, it depends on which parent you asked.
Okay.
So I came into the world, if you will, when I left home, believing that I was unlovable. And it's very interesting, the choices I made then in my life. I really played small. I really just protected because I didn't believe that I had it within me to do anything other than that. Mm-hmm. I especially believed about myself that I was intellectually poor, that I wasn't smart enough to understand textbooks. So interesting, I went to college and I, instead of reading books, I spent a lot of time on the ballroom dance floor and with the ballroom dance team. And so my education was in dancing, even though my interest was in psychology. So I've always been curious about human behavior and that sort of thing. But I jumped right into marriage and had 5 kids, and it sounds like it happened in a day, but it was over the course of 10 years.
Unless you had quintuplets, it definitely was a long time.
Yeah. Now, I don't know which one's the hard way, doing it all in one shot or 5 at a time, 5 different times. But I loved being a mom. It's all I ever wanted to be. And but I didn't have the tools. I didn't have the mental belief system to do the kind of mothering that I wanted to do to break the cycle of codependency in my family history.
Okay.
So interesting because I was pretty safe. I was in a safe place in my little house and my husband worked and I could raise my kids and I was super comfortable and I didn't spend a lot of time with anybody else or outside of my home. My kids were my world. And so, I was like, very limited in, my outside interaction. It was grocery store and church, so push came to shove once upon a time. When I was looking in the mirror, I was standing in a dressing room and I was like, what happened? Because this is post 5 kids and I was generally fit as a kid. I did track. I was on a cheerleading squad and I did dance, ballet, tap, jazz. I wanted to be playing baseball, but my mom had other ideas for me. And so dance it was. And I looked in the mirror and it was the very first time that I took a good hard look. I did one of those where you lift your shirt this way and then you turn and look at yourself that way.
Get all
and
the
I was
angles,
like, what happened? because the person I felt like I was on the inside was young and youthful and enthusiastic and positive and happy. And the person looking back at me was old and tired and frustrated and depressed and like not having a good life. And I thought, you know what? I'm doing what I always wanted to do, which was to be a mom, but I had lost myself in the service of others, which is what happens when we get busy with life, right?
Sure.
And I thought, you know, I could buy the bigger pants right now, or because if I do, I just know that I'm on my way up. I'm just going to keep buying bigger pants.
Absolutely.
Or I could stop right now and do something different. So I put the bigger pants back on the rack. I squoze back into my too small pants, and I headed out the door with my 5 kids thinking there has got to be a better way. And it was in that drive home, we had about 20-minute drive home, that I realized several things. Like I had aha moments all the way home when I decided I was going to do something different. One was I got uncomfortable one meal at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore I could get comfortable one meal at a time.
Sure.
Right. And the other thing was I'm trying to control everything in my life that I don't have control over. And I was like, what is that? And it was the first time I actually went searching for answers to my mindset and why I was trying to like control things in my life that, you know, because we try and control our bodies with dieting, you know, it's like, you know, let's deprive you of food and see if we can make that sustainable, which it's not, right? So I had been on lots of diets, lots and lots of diets. And, you know, and it was like, don't eat for 3 days, stay on the scale. Oh, I gained weight. I'm going to go eat a bag of chips.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And so I was like, you know, that's really not fun. And I thought to myself, I really want to have more fun in life. So I started eating foods that mattered to my body. Then I started exercising in meaningful and effective ways. And I didn't worry about the time ahead. Like if you look 6 months in advance, you'll be like, oh, you know, I'll never get there, you know, right. Or it's overwhelming to you. It's like, you know, it's going to do one of two things. It's going to overwhelm you, like I'll never get there, or it's going to be, oh, I've got 5 months to go. This is no problem. I'll keep eating bad until I get to that 6th month, and then I'll be disappointed that I didn't do anything different, you know?
Right.
So those are the two areas. And so that's when I was like, I don't care if I change. I don't care if I lose weight. I don't care. I'm just going to let go of the mindset that I have to control things. That's it. So I stopped controlling with my mind, doing the micro, you know, looking around, and I started to relax, you know, and my kids noticed, you know, but they were the reasons I was doing this. I was like, I got one shot at this mothering thing. I got 5 eyes. They're all like watching me, you know, and I was like,
10, I hope.
Yeah, 10 eyes. Yeah, 5 sets of eyes.
I'm like, I guess I don't want to make assumptions about your children.
No, they were not cyclopses. But they were watching me, and mothers don't have to say anything about what you believe about yourself. They pick up on it, right? Yeah. So I was like, I got one shot at this, and this is one thing I know I can do to change the mindset of their future selves and what they believe about themselves if I change how I believe about me. So that was a pivotal moment for me. And after about 6 months of eating clean and really starting to pick up on the idea that I actually liked my exercise time, because before that it was like, brain damage. I don't know what to do. I don't know, you know, right, all that. The mindset was like, this is my time and I'm going to claim it and I'm enjoying it, you know, and my time was actually 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. before everybody got up, because I was actually homeschooling everyone. Oh, wow. And school started at 7 and usually ended around 5 or 6. So I was like, okay, the only time I have for me is actually that 5 to 6 in the morning. So I started loving it, and 6 months went by and I had lost 8 dress sizes, and I was like, oh, that's how you get back to me. That's how I get back to me, you know. And we forget, we stand apart from ourselves, and we live this life that's not really truly congruent with who you know you are. Mm-hmm. So that was a huge pivotal moment for me. And then the market of 2008 crashed, you know, and my husband lost his job and somebody had to go to work. And I was like, nope, not doing it, because I was very shy and I was very introverted. And in my mind, I was still the fat girl. I hadn't really caught up with my own transformation, because it takes about a year for your brain to go, oh, I see what's happening in the mirror, right? So that's when push came to shove, and I had to pretty much leave the safety of my home, kicking and screaming. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. So I had to go out and get a job, because I was literally on the brink of homelessness, and I was dumpster diving for food for the kids. Like, it got really bad before it was enough to push me way outside my comfort zone and go get a job.
Wow.
So I put on the only work clothes that I really had, because I just, I mothered in my sweats. So
sure.
I got dressed and I got in the car and I had a little conversation with my higher source. And I was like, okay, I know you see me, and I know you know how scared I am. But if there's a job out there that I'm supposed to take that's going to cause me to not be the main influence on my children's lives, then you're going to put me to work and you're going to make me useful, because I'll be darned if I'm going to go to some back office and file papers, because I didn't have a college degree, right? I didn't have my belief system was I didn't have any skills.
Okay.
And so I got in the car and started driving, and this thought entered the back of my head immediately and said, go to the gym at the end of the street. And I was like, oh, but hell no. I'm not going to the gym at the end of the street. But, in a gym, you're seen.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, I do not want to be seen. This is not me. But I was a little desperate. So, I had to put some food on the table, right? So I was like, well, maybe I'm just hearing things. And so I pull into the parking lot at the gym at the end of the street. Is a brand new, beautiful, state-of-the-art gym that had just been built. And there in the window was a for hire sign. And I was like, no way. So I'm sitting in the car crying. Don't make me go in. Don't make me go in. Don't make me do this. And then I was like, okay, I have to. Like, I have no choice. And so I dry my tears and I grab my resume and I run in the door. I thought to myself, I only have to find somebody who's in charge. And so I just beeline, because I was like, I don't want to run into any muscle guys. Right? And I'm like, who's in charge? Who's behind the desk? And I kind of threw my resume behind the desk at the girl that was standing there. And I said, I'm here to apply for the job. I didn't even know what the job was.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm here to apply for the job. And she's like, great. Do you have experience with money? And I'm like, I paid my kids an allowance. Yes, I do. I do have an experience with money. Yeah. She's like, great. When can you start? I said, tomorrow. And so instantly I got a job way outside my comfort zone. But the next day when I came into work, they made me yell out loud, welcome to Fitness 2000, when people came in the door. And it was so far outside my comfort zone, because I was being seen. Yeah. Right. So again, next pivotal moment in my life is being seen. And turns out that from this experience, I gained a career accidentally. I became a hormonal fat loss expert, because I had done it first myself, even though I didn't know what it was at the time. I wasn't in fitness when I lost 8 dress sizes. But I basically now, as a certified life coach, a self-mastery coach, help women also step back into their lives, gain their confidence, and master those underdeveloped beliefs in our belief system, because we all have them, right? That's no secret. And help women realize their potential, help them to be bold, right? And help them to feel limitless so they can do anything they put their mind to.
That's amazing. So I want to go back first and get just some kind of background information. Where in the world are you from and living right now?
Oh, well, I'm from a little town north of Seattle called Mount Vernon.
Okay.
And I've lived a little bit all over the country. My transformation was made in North Carolina, over in the Tri-Cities, and now I live in southern Utah, St. George, Utah, in the desert, where it's hot and sunny all day long.
Okay, that explains the tan.
Yeah.
All right. It sounded like, at least I kind of got the impression that you're in like a rural area. So that's kind of what I was wondering. And then I hate to ask a lady her age, but you did mention that you had 5 children and that they're of schooling age at least at some point. So how old are you and how old are your kids?
Okay, so I made that transformation when I was 39, got a job, accidental career at 40, and now I'm 53.
Okay.
So yeah, I have grandchildren now, and I'm just getting started.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah.
So then, of course, how I feel like we got a lot of details of what led up to the transformation, and I believe you called yourself an accidentalpreneur.
Yes.
How did you go from shouting "Welcome to Fitness 2000" to now being in the career that you are?
Well, I've had several aha moments since then, but I started out watching the personal trainers train their clients because I was working, making smoothies and stuff like that behind the front desk. And then I spent about a year and I noticed nobody was really having fun. You know, it was like people want to get fit and it's a fun idea to begin with. But when they were sitting there with their trainers, the trainers were counting reps and checking their watch and checking for texts. And I was like, you know, I believe the common denominator amongst all humans is that we want to have more fun.
Yeah.
And when we're having fun, whatever it is we're doing to have fun creates sustainability. So diets are not fun, but living your best life is amazing. Right. So that's actually a motivator to keep you on track, to keep growing and making your contribution and getting excited about life. So in my mind, I was like, you know, I think I can do what they're doing, but I think I could have fun doing it. And, you know, moms know that about raising kids is like, we love to have fun with our kids. We take them to the park and we throw them parties and we have good times. So, I felt like that was a skill that I had developed with my family. And so, and I'm kind of a kid at heart. I always say I'm 32 forever. So I started training. And when I was training with my clients, I was like, let's have a good time. Let's make sure we laugh during our training sessions and that it's an experience you'd want to repeat. So I got the experience of being a personal trainer and helping people reach their goals, but we had a blast doing it. I really never had to look for clients after that. There was always a waiting list because the people walking on the treadmill, not the treadmill, the dreadmill, they were walking there dreading another poor outcome. We're watching. They're like, I want to do what you're doing the way you're doing it. And I thought, you know, this is resonating with people. This is exciting because people do want to have more fun. So from there, I just went to, I opened a boot camp and just ran and played with women. You know, and we did it at 5:30 in the morning, rain, snow, sleet, or hail. We were out there having a good time and being creative with our workouts. And it was getting results. People were really like, you know, reporting how much better they felt and that they stopped obsessing about it and they wanted to eat better. And it was a good time. So fast forward through a divorce, which was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done, to a mastermind group that was conducted by Todd Durkin. I'm
familiar.
Yeah.
Incredible guy.
So, and he's like Mr. Energy, right? And I was like, man, I got to do what he does the way he does it because it's fun, right? Yes. So I spent a lot of time studying Todd's work and being part of his mastermind group. And there was a moment like, whew, I'm telling you, talk about pivotal shift. This was literally where I gave up my entire former story of being unlovable. And that was when I was in fitness and my health crashed. Like I was actually in the best shape of my life and my gut stopped working. And I wasn't absorbing any nutrition from food and my energy was about 2 hours a day. And I was like, wow, what's going on? What is this? And the doctors couldn't figure it out. They didn't know. They're like, well, you eat well, you look great. Like what? I don't know. And so it turns out I was in total adrenal fatigue. You know, you can't go to bed at midnight and get up at 4 every morning before you die.
Especially if you're not just like sitting at a desk the rest of the time, you're running around.
Exactly. So I had to rehab my gut, and it took me about a year. I had to let go of my boot camp and everything. And when I rehabbed my gut, I realized what I was really struggling with, and it was the codependent relationship I was in, that I was married to, more or less, and through no fault of either one of us, because we've tried like the Dickens. They say you can tell a lot about a person by what's on their bookshelf, and we were nothing but self-help. That was, we really tried to understand our relationship, and I had to go get some answers. I had to understand who I was to me and who I was to God, because, when you jump out of your childhood into adulthood, when you go to college, you've always been something to somebody else if you don't take time to just be you for a change. And I didn't do that. I jumped right into marriage and became a mom quickly, and I didn't really know who I was. And so this was like a self-discovery journey of understanding who I was and what I wanted. And those were hard questions to ask, even my clients. I'm like, who are you and what do you want? And the answer is always like, I don't know. Like I'm stuck, so we have an idea of the roles that we play, but we really don't understand our value. So that's the journey I went on. And it was about 3 months writing and crying and wanting a do-over and not getting out of my pajamas.
Yeah.
So that's what it looked like. It wasn't pretty, but about that time, it was time to go to our annual mastermind retreat. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've let go of my boot camp. I'm not technically in fitness anymore. I've had to take a step away from my family to go on this journey to figure out who I was. And I think I want a divorce, which are words that I can't even say out loud at the moment. And I'm going to go step into this energetic world of fitness with 40 amazing fitness professionals who were creating more in their lives, right? More programs, more opening brick and mortars, and all of this amazing stuff. And I was like, I got nothing. Talk about the shame coming to the very top. I was like so embarrassed. They're going to really know that I'm not who I said I was, that I was a fitness professional. Right? They're going to see through my facade that I really don't belong.
Syndrome, if I've ever heard of it.
Right. Yeah. And I was like, I don't belong, and they're going to see through me, and it's going to be the worst moment of my life, and I'm just going to die of embarrassment. Right? Telling myself way worse stories than what was actually true.
Especially when you're going to be with fitness professionals who are like the kindest people.
Yes. And most intelligent, emotionally intelligent people, right? That could really relate, right? Yeah. So it turns out that when I went to this meeting, the first thing we do is 30 seconds, everybody stands up and gives their highlight reel for the year, right? And so I'm like mortified. I'm dying inside. Like I think I'm nauseous. I'm sweaty. I'm, having a panic attack. My heart's going 100 miles an hour. I'm shaking inside, and I'm like literally frozen in my seat. And it turns out that I was sitting at the very last seat at the last table. I was going to be the last one to stand up and end the meeting on this horrible note. And I thought, oh my gosh.
And you're just getting more and more nervous each person.
They're going to boo me out of the room. I was like, oh my gosh. So I thought, you've got to run. You got to stand up and exit the room before it comes around to you, so you don't ruin the meeting. And I literally couldn't move. And it came around to me, and I think I blacked out for half of it. But what I do remember, and I've shared this story several times, and the people that were sitting around me at the table with me have confirmed that yes, that was what I said, was I don't know who I am. And I'm taking a journey that I think it started at birth, but I'm not sure where it's going to end. And I need to know who I am. So I'm not really in fitness. And I've even stepped away from my family to go on this journey to discover who I am. And so that's why I'm here. And I sat down, and I truly was waiting for the room to explode and, boo, get her out of here. She didn't belong, and I received an applause, like a standing applause. And
because you're vulnerable and you shared and it was real, and now you have 40 people who are ready to help you.
Right, but a vulnerability was for everybody but me.
Right. I can understand.
I was the owner of shame, and I wore it proudly. Right, it was my unbelonging to the rest of the world that held me isolated in my own mind.
Sure.
So yeah, it was kind of then that Todd stood up and was like, all right, thank you everybody for your highlights. But the reason I started this mastermind group is so we can open up like that. And I was like, it was totally accidental. I was under the pressure. It's all I could do in the moment,
Yeah.
But it gave me permission. And this is what I do for other women. I give them permission, which is a bold move, right? To give yourself permission to want more, to dream bigger, to go after the things that are all up in your mind. You're like, oh, that'd be a good idea. Nah, not for me. Right? And we take ourselves out of the game. So being in that environment that forced me to recognize what everybody else saw in me above and beyond what I could ever see in me. They believed in me first, so I could believe in me second, right? And that was a huge moment for me. I was like, oh, I was the only person holding me back and taking myself out of the game and holding my value way down here.
Right. Which I
when
think
everybody
is
else
common.
yeah and everybody else is like, you are amazing, you are a rock star. And I had to start listening to what everybody was saying because they all said it, right? And I was like, okay, you must know what you're talking about. I don't see it yet, but I'm willing to lean on you until I can feel it and believe it and own it and be it.
Yeah.
So that was a huge moment. And then after that, I was like, wow, so what do I want in life? And I was able to actually do the writing assignment that you have to write it out and dream big and own what you want for yourself and know that you can have anything you want. It's just a matter of saying it out loud, because you got to say it, write it, and then go do it, work the action plan. So that was huge for me. And then I decided to open up my own personal training studio to teach hormonal fat loss, but I wanted more than anything to teach the mindset of hormonal fat loss.
Yeah.
And what I let you know beforehand was that when it got to the point where my personal training studio became heavy for me, meaning it wasn't actually fulfilling the purpose for which I developed it, I found that people really, really, really wanted to stick to their diet. They just wanted to not, eat less and exercise more. Yeah. But they weren't really getting into the belief system that there's more waiting for them and that they can have it if they want to. Because the hardest thing about my transformation was nothing. It was a decision. It came from my heart and from my very soul, my being, that I could have health if I wanted it. And so that's when I closed my studio, which was very difficult. And I actually had to take 2 months off just to recover from the emotional toll that it took on me and step back. And during the last year of that training studio, I had gotten my life coaching certification. So that's when I was like, okay, what does it look like now? Because I want to take this program online. I do want people to continue to eat well and exercise, but they must believe that health is for them. They must believe that love is for them, and they must believe in their own lovability, because it's bold, it's huge, and it is the game changer that opens up the rest of their life.
I love that. So I want to kind of go back, because I have a little bit of a fitness background, and I met Todd actually at Idea World 2 years ago, I think, when he won the Jack LaLanne Award. But so many of what you said at the beginning of your story, so many of things were really interesting to me, because I feel like a lot of it is the opposite of what I have heard from moms who are looking to find their fitness and health again. So one thing that I hear a similarity with, as you say, like you lost yourself in service to others.
Yes.
I feel like that is what almost every mom seems to do, and all of a sudden they're overweight or feeling frumpy, even if they're still fit or whatever. So like, bravo to you for realizing that and then still making yourself a priority in that way and getting up early and making it happen. But what was really interesting to me is like, it seemed like overnight, of course it wasn't, but it seemed like overnight all of a sudden you woke up in front of the mirror in this body that was unfamiliar to you. But then you had the foresight to realize that, like, meal by meal in these baby steps, you were able to change that. So I'm curious, I guess, with your expertise now, which just seemed intuitive at that time, what did you do both food wise, and then you said you were exercising intentionally instead of standing there like, what the heck should I do every morning? So can you give for people who might be listening and maybe feeling the way you did in front of that mirror so many years ago, kind of what you did and how, and like, I guess a little bit about the services that you're now offering as well?
Sure. Yeah, I wasn't in fitness, like I said before. And so, but I knew enough about food, that nutritionally dense foods, foods that came right out of the ground, right? Or
Sure.
off the tree. It's in its original form, that was the kind of food that my body needed. And that, you know, the chips and ice cream, clearly wasn't working. And I was very adamant about only eating whole foods for myself. But I'm 14 years into this, and I eat like that 80% of the time now, because what's life without, you know, your creamsicle or your, you know, chips with your meal and that sort of thing. But I've been able to maintain it. I've never yo-yo dieted since then, you know. So I think it's key to know that you're eating foods you want to continue to eat. So not all foods, you know, whole foods in particular, agree with everybody. Like, we're not going to sit and eat kale chips 24/7, you know, so you really have to look at food as it pertains to you. You know, what do you love to eat? Because that's what you'll continue to eat. Sure. And truth be told, when you eat a fat loss diet, you do have limited variety. You're not eating a ton of macaroni and cheese mixed in with lasagna, pastas, and pizza, you know. Right. So you have to pick and choose when you want to have that food, and know that you're having a moderate amount. I like to say that I always eat it as much as I want of anything, because all I really want is enough to get me 2 hours down the road. So it kind of spreads the glucose out over the course of the day, right? Sure. So food, I didn't obsess over it. I didn't wonder what to eat or how to eat it. I just ate it. And I ate every 2 hours. So I didn't need to eat more than what I could handle, because if I wasn't hungry in 2 hours, I would go longer. And so that was obviously too much glucose in one sitting to last longer than 2 hours. So I would take the same 3 meals I normally ate, really, and break them up into, you know, breakfast snack, lunch snack, dinner snack. And it just, so I didn't create more work for myself. It was actually very doable, because I also wasn't going to create a new meal plan for me and something for the family. Right. That was too much work. Right. Yeah. So I really wanted to eat in a way that I knew was good for my family too. And so we just blended the two. And so there were always a couple vegetables to choose from. They didn't always have to eat what I was eating. So there was still variety that way, but pretty much I was, if it's on the table and you're hungry, now's your chance. So I didn't really play to what they were asking for in the way of, you know, macaroni and cheese, but we had it once in a while. It just wasn't every day, you know. And exercise, I had to go back to a time in my life when I felt limitless. And so that hadn't been in the last 13 years that I had been raising kids, but it was actually a time in my high school years when, I was blasting the 80s music of the day. And I was a big fan of rock and roll. So AC/DC and I were buds. And that was my power music. And I hadn't listened to it in a while. And I was like, that was the time that I would listen to that and the windows would be down and I'd be like rolling, feeling good about myself. So I put the music back in my ears, and at the time I had to wear like 4 pairs of spandex. My thighs would rub together and it, start a fire with all the friction. So it was very uncomfortable to run. And I wasn't a runner. I'm not a runner. I don't run for fun. It's just really not my thing. But I remember back during those years that I was listening to AC/DC, I was on the track team and I ran sprints. I wasn't any star on the team, but I just did my part, right? I was just part of the team and it was fun. And so I thought, well, I'll just run like I did in high school. I would just do like a 50-yard sprint. And so the morning that I decided to start my workout routine, I didn't really obsess over, what am I going to do and what's it going to look like? I just thought, if I can just regenerate that energy of, the gun's going to go off and I'm just going to like head on down the track and do this running. And so I waited for my theme song to spool up on my, my tape that I was listening to. And when the chorus of Thunder showed up,
Thunderstruck, huh?
Nice. And they started singing Thunder. I was like, here I go. And in my mind, I was just going to be like the wind going down the track. And I was absolutely shocked that I was like, whoa, running through mud. And I was like, oh my gosh. 10 steps in, I was winded. I was done. I had to stop and rest. And I was like, the weather was like 25 degrees out. So I had lots and lots of layers and I could see my breath in the air. And it was a beautiful starry morning. And it was just me and the cows. I didn't even run far enough to get past the cows that were lined up on the fence watching me. And I just thought, oh my gosh, that was awful. And I thought, I have 2 choices right now. I can just hate this and get used to being overweight and I'll just accept it and just go on like this. And I'll be the fat mom. Okay, whatever. Right? That was how I was couching it to myself. And then in that same moment, you know how you can think a thought and there's like no time in between?
Yeah.
They're like layered. The next thought was, or you can get off the pity party wagon and just do it again. Because this is where you are. So accept what is and it'll only get better from here. Yeah. So that I caught my breath and we did it again. And it was like 10, 12 steps. And then I caught my breath and I did it again. And eventually I got back to the house, fell down on the front porch, couldn't believe that I made it back, actually, and didn't have to call for help. And it was the first time I realized I was living again. Like I was alive because I could actually see my breath and I could hear myself breathing and my heart beating. And my little boy, who was out of bed early, opened the front door and there was a glass screen there and he knocks on the glass and he's like, Mommy, can I come out and take a nap with you on the porch? I was like, I'm not napping. I'll come in. Just let me, peel myself up off the cement here and I'll be in a minute. But that was day 1, right? Yeah. And that's when I realized that I actually had fun. No matter how hard it seemed or how bad my thighs rubbed together or how cumbersome I felt inside of this foreign body, I still had fun being me. And so that was day 1.
Wow, that's amazing.
Thanks.
I love that. So now since you've, had a lot more professional training to get your certifications, and I assume someone doesn't just like figure out their own way to be a hormonal weight loss coach. I'm curious, with all of the different things that are going around about intermittent fasting and keto and paleo and vegan and all of the different options there are. Obviously intermittent fasting is the opposite of what got you success, which was eating every couple of hours. What are your thoughts on the whole thing, and what does what you've been educated with tell you? Because I've heard a little bit about the whole adrenal failure thing, and one of my friends wrote a book about like the paleo thyroid solution, and she talks about that as well. People, take or drink a ton of coffee or Red Bull or whatever energy drink, and then they take a Xanax at night to go to sleep, or an Ambien. And no wonder that does things to your adrenals. But I'm curious how all of that plays in as far as your area of expertise and what your beliefs are in your success.
Oh, okay, great. So the adrenal glands, the thyroid, and basically women in general, we're just a ball of hormones, right? Hundreds of hormones that help our heart beat and our lungs breathe and distribute blood, and it affects how we feel every day, right? So food can change your hormonal state. Medical conditions can change your hormonal state, and age. As we get older, our hormonal potential starts to drop as we get older, and then we start to see roles in places where we never had roles before. We're like, whoa, what's happening? So as a hormonal fat loss expert, my expertise lies in helping you identify what you need, because we're all as different on the inside as we are on the outside.
Sure.
Right? So for you to ask yourself what feels good, it's going to take some time. This is not a quick answer. This is where I think most people struggle, is because they're like, just somebody else tell me what my body needs.
Yeah.
And we don't want to actually do the work to test it out for ourselves. So we're like, okay, I'll do keto. Okay, I did that for a week and I didn't get results. So I will now go do paleo. And I did that for a week and I didn't like it. And so now I'm going to hire, a national company to, minimize my calories. And so it's those kinds of things. We're just like going in circles, and we're really not hitting the mark, at least not something that's going to be sustainable long term, because as soon as you go off a program, you're right back to old habits. And it is your belief system about those habits and why those habits are still part of your life that is really what's holding you back. So as a hormonal fat loss specialist, first of all, go get your hormones checked. Just see where they're at, because you might be like, cortisol might be the first thing that's highest when you wake up in the morning, and that's going to be a problem, especially if it's high when you go to sleep, because then you can't sleep, and then you don't feel motivated to exercise or eat right, because when you're tired, you'll feed it. Mm-hmm. Right? But get a professional expert's eyes on your hormones to see if there's something you can do to help improve your hormonal state.
Is that advice you give to everyone, or just somebody
everyone.
Specifically looking to lose weight or change?
If they've gained weight, I ask them to look at their hormones.
Okay.
Right. And then the second, the elements of hormonal fat loss that I teach are through lifestyle. So it's exercise, food, sleep, and stress. If you're not sleeping, you're not burning fat. End of story. All done. Mm-hmm. But oftentimes we'll stay up so late until we can't take it anymore, and then expect to get a jump on the next day and get ahead of the race, but then we fall behind and we start our day in lack. It's like, oh, I got up late. Now I don't have time for breakfast. So I'm going to try and get my body to perform at a high level all the way through the first half of the day without any fuel.
Right.
It doesn't make sense, but because our bodies are miracles, basically, they'll adapt to all kinds of situations. We can get away with it, right? But getting more done on less sleep is not a thing. And no matter how much we'd like to believe it is, it's not. And we know that. But stress is the other part of it. And our stress comes from our thoughts. It's a thought first. It's the meaning we put on that thought. So it's a meaning second. And the meaning turns into an emotion third. So it's a thought that turns into a meaning that turns into an emotion. And that's what drives us, is our emotional state.
Yeah.
So if we have a powerful thought and the meaning is you're a badass, guess what? We're rocking and rolling. And because the emotion is empowered, right?
Sure.
But if you wake up going, oh, I'm so lazy, it turns into I'm worse than everybody else meaning, and then it turns into I'll never get there, I'll never be able to do this, or I'm going to be late, and so therefore there's shame, right? So I call that a yucky gut soup. Like there's a lot of emotions that go into a thought that was a meaning that now turn into something in your gut. It's love is in your heart and fear is in your gut. So when you start to have that yucky gut soup, you got to go back to the original thought. Where did that thought come from? Is it true? Because
Right.
90, if it came from fear, 100%, it's not true.
Right.
You're just telling yourself a worse story. Ask me how I know. I was the queen of bad stories, right?
Yeah.
So that was super important for my clientele to actually do the work of uncovering the story that they were telling themselves that was a extra bad meaning, and then it was a yucky gut soup after that. So
That's
so
a
those
really great
those are
tip.
the methods that I use to help people work through their disbelief of their true potential.
I love that. So, in all of these success stories, you've obviously shared some hard times and some scary times. And maybe you already told this story, but I'm curious about the scariest moment that you've ever pushed through. Was that at the mastermind, or is that one that hasn't come up yet?
No, that it was definitely the mastermind, because it was a pivotal moment that made me shed my shame.
Yeah.
I absolutely, in that moment, was reborn,
Mm-hmm.
right? I gave myself permission to be who I was put here to be,
Yeah.
and that my way is actually the right way. You know, that I was listening to my intuition to go to this thing and put myself in that situation even to start with, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm telling you, when you do something that scary, you do not fear the judgment of others ever again. Like, it cured me. I was free of your good opinion of me. You know,
Sure.
I'm just going to do me, and I'm happy doing that. And it's, you know, it led to me really loving being me. And not everybody can say that yet, but
Sure.
it's possible.
Yeah. So in that moment, you said like you kind of blacked out through half of it and whatever. You said you were paralyzed and couldn't run away, even though you were considering that. But how did you push past that fear and just honestly say like, hey, I'm here. I feel like a fraud. I'm not in fitness. I'm still figuring myself out, as opposed to like, well, I had an okay year, or, you know, something else you could have said.
Yeah. I think that was the people pleaser in me. It was like,
Yeah.
well, you don't have a choice. You have to stand up. It's what we do here.
Okay, so you're like a rule follower, and you're like, I have to tell.
Yeah, I have to, and I have to tell the truth. That's a high value of mine, is, you know,
Sure.
to trust and be trusted. So
Yeah.
I had to stand up and speak my truth, which is,
Sure.
oh, golly, if you grew up with shame, that's like the last thing you want to do is announce your truth to everybody. I don't know who I am. There you go. You know, but that is your rebirth. That is when
Yeah.
everything gets better. Mm-hmm.
I love that. So through all of this, and whenever I ask this, I always give a disclaimer that if you don't know, that's fine. And this is something that changes for a lot of people too, and it's dynamic. But I'm curious if you know your purpose, and if so, what that is.
Absolutely. I think I knew this at age 9. That,
Wow.
that was a gift that was given to me to know that I can see the best in people and help them become all that they can be. That is my purpose.
I love
What
that.
I do.
So how did you do that back when you were 9, or know that? Like how did that look for a 9-year-old?
So I've had a lot of spiritual experiences in my life, and they were gifts. I didn't ask for them to be manifested to me or made known to me, but it's a gift that I had early on to know that I was of great worth. And it wasn't being modeled to me in my home. There wasn't anybody really who was feeding that information to me. It was my own awareness and understanding of my inner intelligence, if you will. And we all have an inner intelligence. You know, without our
Right.
bodies, we are just intelligences. That is my belief system. And my intelligence was speaking to me, and my knowing was of my great worth. And so I also knew about myself that I could see the best in others, and I could also help them become all that they were put here to be. So I can't tell you any more other than it wasn't like I had, an angel come down from heaven or anything. It was
Sure.
just an inner knowing that's been built into me to know of my purpose.
So how did that work? Because you mentioned that like your upbringing kind of taught you, or the way you felt for a long time was that you were unlovable. So how did you feel your worth and feel unlovable at the same time?
Yeah. Wow. That's really a good question because, the messages in my household, and like I said, moms don't have to say anything really about who they are and their belief system. You will believe about yourself what your mom believes about herself, right? So my mother was the parent of the two that I worked really hard to please. I wanted her to like me. And I grew up with the idea that you have to earn your love. You have to do something to be loved. When in actuality, babies, they can, poop and pee and slobber and throw a tantrum and we love them anyway, right? Yeah. So that's really key. That was key for my healing, my emotional healing, to realize that you don't have to do anything to get love because you already are loved. And you are already loved. And so when I recognized in myself, I didn't know what that was. I didn't recognize that I was being given an understanding and a knowing at a young age. I just thought that was normal to know that you have great worth. But in my household, it was a very opposing message that you don't have value and you are not valued or loved. And it's not, let me just set the record straight. My parents did the best they could with what they had to work with. My mother didn't mean to pass that message on to her children.
Sure.
But she just didn't know how to change that belief system about herself. So it was difficult to hear that. But there was some part of me was like, that's not true. That can't be true. That it doesn't match with what I know about myself. So I think I was always a little conflicted that way. I wanted to receive love, but I didn't know how to get it appropriately at a young age. And that's what codependency is. So I had to learn how to be an interdependent. And Melody Beatty was one of my heroes to do that because the woman actually lived through codependency while writing the best books about codependency her entire life. And every book she wrote was another stage of recovering from codependency. So I realized that I don't have to have come from an environment of love and glory and, the perfect parents, but that you understand your lovability on a much higher level when you come from a place of scarcity, because when you start to enter abundance out of the sheer will of needing to be part of abundance, that knowing becomes stronger in you of your loved and lovability that you were born with. Like you start to receive more of that because you are that. You realize your self-worth.
I love that. So you said, was it Melody or Melanie Beatty?
Melody.
Yeah,
like the music. Melody Beatty is the go-to expert for codependency, recovering codependency. She wrote Beyond Codependent No More and Beyond Codependency and The New Codependency. So she's got all the books, and she's really, they were her therapy. Literally, she wrote them because it was her therapy as she recovered from severe codependency. So anyway, she was somebody that helped me find myself.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So those are obviously books that you would recommend to someone who has codependency. What are other books you have to recommend?
Okay, so The Gifts of Imperfection. I'm sure you probably get a lot of Brene Brown references and recommendations.
Yeah, I've been thinking about her the whole interview, of course. So
yeah. Well, you can see that it's a textbook for me. Like I marked it up, and it's literally, I was like, oh my gosh, that's me. That's me. That's me. That's me.
Yeah.
And it was all the shame and guilt that I carried that wasn't really mine to carry in the first place. And by the way, that's actually how I transformed my body. I let go of guilt and shame that wasn't mine. I picked it up and I carried it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't actually my burden to carry. So when I set it down and gave it back to the person it really belonged to, I lightened up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So I read Brene Brown that kind of explained that concept to me after I made the transformation, but I read her book, and if you will, hers is permission to be who you were supposed to be. And I needed permission because I wasn't going to give it to myself. Yeah. And so her book was How to Give Yourself Permission. If I were to rewrite her title,
yeah,
how to give yourself permission to embrace who you are. That's what she did for me. So I highly recommend that one because I go back and read it because it reminds me, oh yeah. Because once you've been codependent, it doesn't really ever leave you. If you've ever been in an environment of scarcity, it doesn't really leave you. You remember it quite quickly because of the other elements in your life, but you don't have to stay there, and it helps you move out of it very quickly. So I loved her book for that very reason. Okay. And then the other book, this is not one that many people know about, is The Secret Code of Success by Noah St. John.
I'm not familiar, so he's doing a good job keeping it secret, I guess.
Yeah, and he actually was on Oprah. And so that's how I heard about his book, was when he was interviewed by Oprah. And the book it's the 7 hidden steps to more wealth and happiness. But there is one little thing in there that just triggered my mind, and I went to another level in my own self-recovery. And that was, he talks about affirmations, not affirmations, afformations.
Okay.
And so an affirmation is something you probably don't believe is true about yourself yet, but you would like it to be true someday, right? Sure. So we're like, I am strong, I am powerful, I am awesome. And we say those, but if our belief system doesn't agree.
If we think that's BS, then it's a waste of time saying them.
Exactly. So if we're like, but it's not true. And I'm old and frumpy, and there I am in the mirror, and I'm really not those things. Then we'll dismiss it, and we don't continue with affirmations, right? But if we really want to get somewhere with ourselves, we're going to do affirmations.
Okay.
And affirmations is forming a better question. So like I said, I had this inner knowing. So that's why this resonated with me quickly. When I had this inner knowing of who I was, and that I had a lot of self-worth. He says, ask your inner knowing a better question. So let's take nutrition. People are like, oh, I want to eat better, right? And so you would ask yourself a question. Why am I so good at eating nutritionally dense foods to feed my body? And your inner knowing will answer. Now, if it comes up with a negative answer, like, oh, but I'm not good at it, that wasn't your inner knowing talking to you.
Right.
Your inner knowing, your inner wisdom will give you the answer to the test. So when I would ask myself, why am I so good at eating nutritionally dense foods to fuel my body? My mind caught hold of the idea, because you're willing to go to the grocery store and shop in the vegetable aisle. Bling. It's not rocket science, right? But it is an answer. And the answer is different for everybody. But if you ask yourself a better question, why am I so good at getting up in the morning and sticking with my exercise routine? It's because I prepared the night before. Yeah. Right? Those are answers. I put an entire system in place to make sure that I got up to exercise, because I had to actually manage my family. And the first day I got up to exercise was a fluke. It wasn't a fluke. I had my clothes laid out, but it was like I got up and did it. But is that sustainable? Not if I'm going to bed late. Yeah. So I actually had to reverse engineer all of that with my kids and my family, get them in bed sooner. What did they need from me so they could go to bed sooner, so I could go to bed sooner, so I could get up. But if I ask myself a better question, why am I so good at managing my family? Because I want to exercise. Yeah. Right? It's conversely true. So asking yourself a better question, why am I so lovable? Like if you were to ask yourself that, just close your eyes for a second, like, why am I so lovable?
Are you asking me my answer?
Yeah. What came to mind, like instantly? What was that instant?
Well, I think I genuinely have a good heart and, mean the best for everyone and really just want good things for everyone.
Truth. That's your truth.
Yeah.
Right? It's who you are. It's what you do. It's how you live. That is your truth. And so, but you kind of felt a little uncomfortable saying it out loud.
Well, I wasn't sure if you were just wanting me to reflect or if you were, asking me or kind of collectively the listeners. So
right.
But,
yes. But it's a little bit like saying it out loud. It's like, is that okay to say? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That was my truth.
Sure.
That's exactly true for me. And so, but it's getting over feeling uncomfortable saying your truth about who you are. Because if the answer from your innate intelligence comes to you and says, it's because you're awesome.
Yeah.
How many of us are going to be like, it's because I'm awesome? We're going to be like, because I'm awesome?
Right. Yeah. For some reason that stops, I think, around 10 or 11. Like, if you ask a kid, they would be like, because I'm awesome.
Yes. Yeah, that actually stops at the age of 7.
Oh, wow.
At the age of 6, if you ask a group of 6-year-olds, who's the smartest one in the room? They all are like, me, but if you ask a group of 7 or 8-year-olds, who's the smartest one in the room? They'll like start pointing fingers.
Wow.
Yeah. That's where our identity gets a little, skewed. It's where we lose the story of self.
Sure.
Is in those years.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I feel like you've given so much value so far, and I appreciate the book recommendations as well. I'm wondering if there's any advice that you would like to leave our listeners with, any lessons you've learned that you wish you learned sooner, or just something you'd like to share in general.
Oh, that's really good because I'm older now, and anything over 50, a lot of women actually take themselves out of the game. It's like, well, I can't go back to school at this point in my life. Mm-hmm. I can't do this thing that's calling to me. I want more, but I can't have it. I have to stay at the job that I've been at for all these years, mm-hmm. And I'm stuck, or I have to stay, I have to keep my personal growth down to a dull roar. I can't really shine. Yeah. I say you're right where you need to be. And if at this point in your journey, as you're listening to this particular podcast, that you feel like there's something more calling to you and you've been squashing that feeling because you think it's too late for you and that it wouldn't be a good time for you, it wouldn't be calling to you if it wasn't your moment, if this wasn't the right time. So for people who want more for themselves, they can dismiss the age thing is, we're 32 forever. So let's just go with that. And forget about time, forget about age, don't make that a reason that you don't go live your best life and claim all that is in store for you, because you can have anything you want.
I love that. I appreciate that too. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
So, of course, people are listening and probably, if they're interested in working with you, they want to, or at least getting this kind of motivation on a regular basis, because I know you're active on social media. Where can we find you online? And if we want to work with you, how does that work?
Sure. I'm Mama T Ford on Instagram. My kids, I've always referred to myself as Mom, but they've always adopted Mama. So they call me Mama, MOMMA. And my nickname in the fitness world is T. It's easy to remember. So Mama T Ford on Instagram. And I'm Teresa Ford, Living Fired Up on YouTube, which I have a lot of coaching videos on there based in the hormonal fat loss mindset.
Okay.
And then you can email me at livingfiredup@gmail.com.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
And then I saved my favorite question for last. And it's so interesting, especially given the conversation we had where you said you knew your purpose at 9. And then since then you said kids kind of start to question their identities around 7 or 8. And I always pick the age of 8. So it's kind of interesting giving those contexts how this fits in. But if little Teresa had a crystal ball at age 8 and could see Mama T now, on a scale of 1 to 11, how excited would little you be to see everything you've done from 8 to, I think you said 53, and then you probably have a reasonable idea of what you're doing the next couple weeks or months or foreseeable future. So I'm wondering, on 1 to 11, how excited little you would be to see big you.
Oh yeah. I think she would be relieved.
Yeah.
I think she would be like, whew, wasn't sure you were going to make it, but you did.
Oh, wow.
You know, there I am. That's my little me would be like, there I am.
Yeah.
So yeah. I think she'd be 10, 11, 12. Yeah.
I love that.
She'd be pretty glad that she's alive and well.
That's great to hear. Well, thank you so much for what you're doing in the world. Thank you for finding yourself so that you could share yourself with everyone else. I can't even imagine how many people's lives you've positively impacted, and hopefully more with this podcast too. So I really appreciate you sharing your story.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This has been so much fun. Appreciate you.
My pleasure.
I absolutely loved her vulnerability. I loved her story. I hope you did as well. She is so generous to give some free consultations away. So if you are interested in that, head to the show notes, www.mandiem.com/episode 207, and you can see how you can win those. So make sure you go there. That's also where you'll see all of her book recommendations, as well as links to where you can find Teresa online. So I hope that you love that. Now, I know you're probably heading there right away to enter to win and to go check Teresa out elsewhere. But while I'm sending you places, I would love it if you haven't already, if you go to iTunes or whatever app you're listening to this on and click the share button and either forward it to someone who you think specifically needs to hear this message or share it out on your social media profiles. I would really appreciate that. While you're there also, if you haven't already subscribed, I would love it if you did that so that every time there's a new episode, you either get an automatic download or a notification that the episode exists so you can listen to it. And then if you're also there, if you could leave me a review, I would really appreciate it. The shares and the reviews and the downloads all help me because I am trying to show as many people as I possibly can, first of all, that they don't have to live a life that they don't enjoy and can make bold moves, even starting at the baby steps to get to that point. And then also to hopefully show them how to do it through the stories of the people who I'm interviewing, the incredible people who are taking risks and living the lives of their dreams. So it would help me if you did all those things so that either you're sharing it out to people or iTunes is suggesting it as a podcast that's worth people's time. I would appreciate it if you did that. All right, stay tuned and hopefully get that notification or auto download for Friday's episode. I have a challenge from Teresa that I think you will love. All right, as always, be bold and have a sparkly day. Bye-bye.